Where am I actually going?
I'm Gary, and this is Coasting with Culture, which is all about combining theme park visits and riding roller coasters with various cultural experiences around the world. It's time for another adventure, but here's the kicker. It begins without a set destination. While I have a location in mind, it'll be Delta Airlines that will help me determine where this adventure is headed. As I increased my class load beginning with the winter 2024 quarter, had my usual tour work, and now some additional school bus driving, this year had become quite busy. Hence my limitation to shorter weekend trips for the first half of the year. But as I began my early planning for 2024 travels, I saw the end of June through the beginning of September as a golden opportunity for getting my travel fixed for the year. The scheduling process at Tours Northwest is such that we have a decent amount of flexibility, and with the potential shift options we have, I determined that I could theoretically give myself a sort of 8 days on, 6 days off schedule, with alternating long weekends, while still having close to full-time hours on the clock each week. So I had penciled in roughly 4 week-long trips that went to a variety of destinations. But as the spring quarter was drawing to a close, I found a path where I could finish the digital media arts program at Bellevue College within the next year, on the condition that I kept my 2 class per quarter pace and sacrificed my theoretical summer schedule to take a documentary class that would cover a needed elective. Dropping most of those travel plans was a bummer, as I was really looking forward to scratching that travel itch, but I appreciated the opportunity to complete this program sooner than I originally anticipated. It also didn't mean that there wouldn't be any opportunities to travel, as the class met twice a week, and there was a week and a half block of time between the spring and summer quarters, so I could still go for at least one slightly longer adventure, and there was a destination I had in mind.
It looked like we are actually going to be crossing into Austria on this ride to get over to Germany today.
While I've technically been to Austria, passing through on the bus Philip and I took from Zurich over to Munich doesn't really count. So I knew even back then I'd want to come back for a proper visit, especially for taking in the beautiful Austrian landscape and exploring cities like Vienna. What ultimately made it my destination of focus for this trip, though, was an announcement by a smaller amusement park called Phantasiana that they were retiring their Wild Train roller coaster by the end of the year. True, this ride doesn't look like much, but several other coaster enthusiasts who have ridden it and other coasters from the same designer found it to be one of the biggest surprises in the hobby, so I knew I'd want to try it out before it was gone. Now, getting to Austria itself presented a bit of a challenge, as while I was able to cover my bills leading up to the busy summer season, where I typically would make a big portion of my annual income, this one would be slightly hindered because of that documentary class. So I knew I couldn't really go nuts on an expensive flight, and finding a good deal to Europe in late June, that's a tad tricky. Not to mention that there weren't too many great options with points either. So the ultimate solution would be provided once again by my friend Philip, courtesy of Delta Airlines. Being able to utilize benefit flights to go standby can certainly help keep costs down, but it does present other challenges. The biggest being that Delta hasn't flown into Austria since 2008 when it terminated its service to Vienna. So if I was going to go there, I'd have to look at some other options, and based on early flight loads, it appeared the best one would be to fly to Detroit, then catch a connection over to Munich. While this would unfortunately mean a 6th and 7th time in Germany for less than 48 hours, it was a pretty solid option, given that a few smaller Austrian parks I'd want to visit weren't too far off the fastest route over to Vienna. But as seen in previous Coasting with Culture adventures, you can't always count on getting the flights you want. And as this would be in the busy summer travel season, I knew there's a pretty good possibility of not getting the exact flights I wanted. So this leads us to why I don't know for sure where I'm going. Even if I can't get to Austria as I hope to, I'm not about to stay home either. The ultimate goal of the week was to go somewhere far and somewhere foreign. So I looked to see what other flights had open seats to take advantage of, keeping anywhere that I could get to without needing a visa as an option. The plan was that I'd give myself up to a certain point to get to Munich, and if I wasn't on my way by that time, I'd look at all international flights leaving from whatever airport I was at in the moment, and pick the one with the best chance of making. Say I couldn't even get to one of the cities that flew to Munich, as Delta doesn't have a direct flight there from Seattle. I'd take a look at all the day's international flights from SeaTac, and hop on the one with the best seat availability, which meant possibly making a return to Seoul, Taipei, Tokyo, or London. But preference would go to Amsterdam or Paris, as I've only spent a day at most in either city, and there's some quality parks I could hit in those respective countries. In the event that I made it to a connecting city like Detroit, or maybe a New York or Atlanta, but the flight to Munich doesn't pan out, I'd do the same thing there as I would in Seattle, and find an international flight with seat availability to go on. With Detroit being my most likely target, that could mean a return to Seoul, Tokyo, London, and an added option of Rome. But preference again would go toward Amsterdam and Paris, or perhaps it would be to Frankfurt for the sake of finally giving Germany that much-deserved longer visit. Or maybe it becomes a pure culture trip with a flight to Reykjavik and exploring Iceland for a few days. Considering the potential options from the various Delta hubs and focus cities, I had plenty of backup options if Plan A didn't pan out, so all that was left to do was to find out which destination it would be. Good morning, everybody. Welcome on board for the Mount Rainier tour. My name's Gary. I'll be the one taking you out to Mount Rainier National Park today. And according to the forecast, it looks like we are going to be in store for a great day out of the park. We're going to get a chance to enjoy some of the greatest natural wonders that Western Washington has to offer. And that's going to bring us back to Seattle. I want to take this opportunity to thank you all so much for joining me for today's Mount Rainier tour. I hope everybody enjoyed their time on board, and I hope you learned something about Mount Rainier and the surrounding area that you may not have known before you began this tour today. When the time comes for you to head home, I hope it's a safe journey home, and I hope we get to see you again here in the Pacific Northwest in the future. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Safe travels. It's starting to look a little bleak. So there's currently -2 seats for that Detroit flight, and the only other flight that's taking off tonight that I think I could reasonably catch before it's too late would be to Atlanta, and that one also doesn't have any seats left over. So I'm going to be spending this evening as I kind of get settled in here and grab a shower after a beautiful day at Mount Rainier, and I'm going to start looking to see if I can figure out how to get myself to Detroit tomorrow. The previous night's search didn't really find any good options for creative routing to Detroit, so I instead listed for the next morning's first flight, which also didn't pan out, and then what appeared to be the next best chance, which was a 3:15 direct flight. On the bright side, this delay allowed me to run a few errands I was planning to do when I got back, so I'd have less to worry about when I returned home from my trip. And as the afternoon came, I made my way over to SeaTac to see if I'd catch that flight. So as of the most recent update for that Detroit flight, I'm currently in the second to last spot to make it. So keep my fingers crossed that it continues to stay that way. Strike that. I just looked it up and I'm now 14th for 13 seats. So I think this one's going down to the wire. And the most recent look shows that I am approximately number 16 for 13 seats. Not looking good! As I made my way to the gate, I looked at the standby board, and boy, it wasn't looking good. At that moment, I was 6th in line for the final seat, so I was becoming doubtful that I'd be on that flight to Detroit. Since there was a good chunk of time before the next Detroit flight, I wanted to find out what other options I might have, and one I hadn't really considered before was looking like a solid alternative. A flight to Boston was taking off about a half hour later that had a lot of open seats. If I made it over there, I could start the next day, which was essentially my deadline for getting to Detroit in the same time zone, and would have a number of shorter routes I could potentially take getting to Detroit. If I couldn't find anything that would get me there, Boston had some interesting destination possibilities, as like Detroit, they had flights to Amsterdam, London, Paris, and Rome. but there were some unique options such as Athens, Edinburgh, Lisbon, and Dublin. 3 of them would mean getting to a new country. But since I was already at the gate for Detroit, I decided to hold off switching until it was certain this flight wasn't happening, especially as I moved up the waiting list a couple spots, and a name had been called a few times that matched the letters of the first in line, so it seemed possible they might be a no-show. And the 2 names after that were traveling together, so with only 1 seat left over, there was a possibility I could squeak in there. And then, just moments later, my name was called, and I was the last person to make the flight to Detroit. Even if it meant I was stuck in the middle seat, I was okay with it, because what felt like the hardest part of getting to my goal destination had been solved.
I can tell you right now, I am very grateful this worked out because now I get to enjoy sleeping in a bed instead of having to do a red eye. You know, I thought that was a very real possibility, or even worse, sleeping at the airport.
Getting to that hotel would provide its own minor challenge though, as there were a ton of people waiting for shuttles in the same area, and I ended up missing the first shuttle to the hotel I booked. Or so I thought. It turned out it was for a different Holiday Inn Express, and the shuttle for the one that I needed wasn't operating that night. So I had to grab a lift, which was pretty annoying if I'm being honest. But seeing as how there were still over 60 open seats for that flight to Munich, I felt that I could rest easy, knowing that the likelihood of making my destination of choice had greatly increased. Since there was that inconvenience of no shuttle, the desk agent was kind enough to offer me a late checkout, which gave me a nice and quiet place for doing some voiceover script writing that I hadn't been able to do during the past quarter because of work and class. Then in the early afternoon, I made my way back to the airport for what I was fairly certain would be my flight over to Munich. In the midst of all the chaos that happened in the beginning of this trip, there was a minor change I forgot to mention.
So when I originally planned this trip, I had the idea that I was going to be doing this on my own because of the sort of flexible nature of it. The fact that I wasn't going to be able to know exactly where I was going, and only so many people have that kind of flexibility. Well, in the midst of all the chaos that was going on with trying to figure out how I was going to get to Detroit, 2 nights ago, I spoke with somebody who happens to have that kind of flexibility. And so this solo trip has now become a duo trip.
What? What's up? What are you doing here?
I know, right?
It's so weird to meet you in Detroit.
Yeah!
Why are you here at my airport?
I don't know.
You don't know.
So yeah, as I mentioned, it's no longer a solo trip, it's now a duo trip because Erica here happened to have some time off from work. And what were you gonna do?
I don't know. I was trying to decide if I was going to do stuff at home. I saw Gary was having a trip, so I said, why not? I'm like, why would I want to work when I can go to Munich and ride roller coasters? So here I am.
And the flight's looking pretty open, so I think we are going to get to Munich.
We're good.
And make our way to Austria.
We're good. I'm waiting. I've never been to Vienna. I've never been to Munich, and we're flying to Munich, and I can't even get flights. So, and how am I ever getting a chance to get to Vienna? Seriously.
So yeah, that's happening now.
Little did I realize, though, that I'd run into someone else from my theme park past, as I happened to see one of my fellow former skippers of the Jungle Cruise, Chanel, walking down the terminal on the way to her next flight. It seemed like such a crazy chance encounter, but I certainly enjoyed getting to catch up a bit, and she and Erica swapped some flight attendant stories. While we still had a bit of time before the flight to Munich, we took advantage of my priority pass for the sake of some time at Be Relax with their massage chairs. There was a pretty good chance we'd be spending nearly 8 hours in economy, so I thought it'd be nice to enjoy a bit of comfort before that, and I think Erica agreed that this was a good call. Before long, we'd venture over to the gate where this product of my home state, a Boeing 767, was waiting to take folks over to Germany. And while we could confirm making this flight was happening, there was one question that remained. Would we fly in economy, or would we manage to have a more comfortable seat? That's a question we'll answer next time as we make our way across the Atlantic and over to Europe. But the fact of the matter was that the goal destination was happening. So the next few days would be all about coasting with culture in Austria. Thank you for watching this video from Coasting with Culture. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and click on the subscribe button to see future videos here on YouTube, like these ones which you may enjoy as well. Additional content can be found at coastingwithculture.com, and you can also follow Coasting with Culture on various social media channels at CoastWCulture for announcements, previews, and updates. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care and safe travels.